So, one concept that I wanted to talk about before we begin analyzing produced screenplays is the concept of character arcs. Now, because this is literally about the shape of a story, this is a lot easier if I can draw it out. So, I've drawn it on this sheet of paper. I'm going to talk through the three main types of character arcs you will likely see in movies you watch. If you'd like a copy of this, I've scanned it and it's included in the files for Module 3. So our three main shapes of character arcs are the upward character arc, the flat character arc, and the downward character arc. So I'll go through each one in turn. So basically an upward character arc is the path of a heroic character. So his or her life starts here and it goes upward, it becomes better because he or she changes for the better over the course of the story. Flat character arc is the path of a static character. And by static, we mean stays basically the same. His or her life, as a result, stays the same. They start here and they end up here on the same level because he or she does not change over the course of the story. And then our third shape is the downward character arc. This is the path of the tragic character. So basically, they start here, and then their life goes in this direction, downward. His or her life becomes worse, right? Goes down because he or she changes for the worse. So what we see, right, is that if we're trying to figure out the shape of a character's arc, we can basically ask three questions, and the answers to these three questions suggest the shape of the character's arc. So first we can ask ourselves, who is the protagonist at the start of the screenplay? By this, I don't mean that person's going to change, like we're going to go from one person to a different person by the end. Like, it starts off that our protagonist is Rick and then it winds up being Ilsa. What I'm trying to say when I say who is the protagonist at the start of the screenplay, I'm trying to ask, like, where are they, right? Like, are they at a low point? Are they at a high point? Where are they? I'll give you an example of this in a minute. The second question then, who does the protagonist need to be at the end? So, say they're starting here at a low point, do they need to be at a high point, for the end of the movie? They're starting at a high point and they need to stay at that high point to get to the end of the movie. Are they starting at a high point but they need to be brought low, right? Do they need to go down in order to be ready for the end of the movie? So that's the spirit of the second question. And then related to that, the third question, how does the protagonist need to change in order to be prepared for the climax? So I'll give you guys an example of this over on this side here, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. So often what you'll see, right, is that at the start of the movie, say you have a character who's in a relatively low place, they are unconfident, they are relatively passive, they are not yet heroic. Oftentimes this person needs to follow an upward character arc, right? So that by the end of the film, they are the opposite of what they were at the start. So if at the start they are unconfident, here they are confident, right? If at the start they are passive, here at the end they are active. And if at the start they were not yet heroic, at the end they are heroic. In American movies, in modern times, this is most often the shape of your protagonist's arc. We see this in The Matrix, we see this in Casablanca. Most often we see a character who has the makings of a hero at the start, but they have not yet realized that potential, and we need to set them on a path of growth, right? So that they end up being that hero by the end. So we see that with the character of Neo in The Matrix, we see that with the character of Rick in Casablanca. These other character arcs are not as common, especially nowadays. Let me zoom back out a little bit, sorry. So a downward character arc, like I said, is the path of a tragic character. So this is something you see more in older plays, ones written by people like Sophocles or Shakespeare. So Oedipus, for instance, in Sophocles' play Oedipus the King, follows a downward tragic arc. The character of Macbeth or the character of Hamlet, right, in Shakespeare's plays Macbeth and Hamlet, they both follow downward character arcs. The reason for this is that Americans recently do not love tragedy, at least not in our movies. Lately, we've been much more into stories of heroic characters. A flat character arc you will see from time to time as well. Not as much recently, but if you think about older James Bond movies or older Indiana Jones movies, basically at the start of the movie you have a character who is cool and confident and heroic, and they just need to stay that way, right? That doesn't mean there aren't challenges, but the challenges are more challenges that would be tempting them to not be as cool, not be as confident, not be as heroic as they are. So the challenge for them in a flat character arc is to stay awesome, basically. But like I said, this is the one you'll see most often nowadays. So that's our quick introduction to character arcs. Like I said, there's a scanned copy of this piece of paper that's available in the files for this unit of the class. All right.